Hello. Alright, I was just looking at the coronavirus numbers. Spain has passed Italy on deaths. France has a lot. Oh, the bot showed up fast. Okay. Starting with this email. Yeah, sadly the adult questions do look dumb if you know what to look for. Like, people have a wrong perspective on what looks dumb and why. Yeah, this is a bad question. The child question was better. So someone asking this, they're revealing negative things about themselves, so it makes them look dumb. It's not just social signals that the questions make them look dumb. It's also people won't answer their fucking questions. The adults don't know the answers and lie and mislead and pretend they're dumb questions as an excuse not to answer and say figure it out yourself and do all sorts of things to the point where the children give up on asking, primarily I think because they're not getting answers. Like, I think the lack of answers that are actually useful to the child is a bigger factor than the social disapproval at that age. I think if the child was getting useful answers like 50% of the time, they'd probably keep asking despite social disapproval because there's so much value there. But if they're getting useful answers 1% of the time and they're getting social disapproval, they'll give up. If they're getting useful answers 1% of the time and they're not getting social disapproval, they'll probably give up. Like, it's asking questions is work. You have to get answers a decent amount of the time to put in that work. Or you need to figure out how to answer your own questions. Like, formulating the questions is useful for your own learning if you know how. Like, because if you formulate the question, then it's cheap to ask someone else because you've already figured out the question. And then if they don't answer, you just figure it out yourself. So it's like asking them is just the shortcut if it works. Then you can have a much lower rate of getting answers. And it's still okay because if they don't answer, you'll get an answer from Google or from books or something. You'll figure it out. But if you don't have a way of getting your questions answered, if you have screen time limits or you don't know how to type words or a lot of these things, it's a lot more of a problem to get your own answers. And see, a lot of what kids are taught is They're not taught that their parent or teacher is stupid or ignorant and the answers are online, but their parent is too dumb to use Google. The thing the parent implies to them is the answer is not easily available on Google. They might imply no one knows or cares about that, or they might imply that's only for experts. Okay. You might be able to zoom in on your own screen, by the way. I'll zoom this one, too. Okay. Anyway. Right, they are not taught that the reason they're not getting an answer from their parent or teacher is a failing of the parent or teacher. It's not put that way to them. That there's something wrong with their parent or teacher, but with a little work in the internet, they can surpass their parent or teacher. That's definitely not the impression kids get. They get the impression like life is hard and doesn't make sense. There aren't consistent, reasonable, simple answers. You can learn a few things, but learning anything is a lot of work and a huge hassle, and you should generally avoid it when you can. That's more what they're taught. So that it's perfectly reasonable that their parents don't have very many answers because they acted like reasonable people and only learned a couple things so they could get a job or whatever. And enough to like graduate school because that's important. So these things are very discouraging to a child. He's sort of told the answers aren't out there except with a lot of work that's not worth it. And the reason the parent's not giving him answers is the parent is an efficient, rational person, not a lazy, stupid person. So that discourages the child from looking for his own answers. He's taught that libraries are annoying and boring, not libraries are wonderful, but your parent is an uncultured barbarian. The messaging is quite important here, I think. And parents give a lot of bad answers. It's not just that they don't answer. They give a lot of bad answers that are confusing, and the child is told, that was a good answer, you're stupid, that's the problem. Which is also very discouraging. He thinks the problem is he's stupid, so answers to questions don't help because he's too stupid to understand them. Little does he know, the problem is the answer, not him. Children don't have the like perspective on the world to know when their parents are the idiots. That's like not a fair thing to ask of them. Their parents are their primary information sources. When their parents are being dumb, it's very hard for the child to circumvent. And then on top of that, they get screen time limits and all sorts of other problems like that to keep them away from information. Like, how good is their access to audiobooks, Wikipedia, Google searches, YouTube, etc., etc.? Not so good, usually. So, like, partly their information is limited to their parents because of, like, reasonable reasons. That's who they interact with a lot, and that's who's willing to help them a lot, and so on. But it's partly limited because the parents are suppressing their ability to learn and sort of telling them, get your information from school, not from these other sources. Don't get information on your own initiative. Get information when the teacher tells you to. The authorities know what you should learn. You don't need other information about the world. That's kind of part of the messaging. Don't take initiative to do your own learning. Don't be curious, be obedient. So these are a bunch of other things besides this whole like looking dumb thing. I'm gonna look at the full blog post. Okay, there's a bit more. Oh yeah, questions that prove points are really, really common after speeches or talks or lectures or that kind of thing. Like if a political person gives a speech for half an hour and then they take audience questions, the audience questions always it seems like most of them are, I think this, like comment on my point. Or they're just arguments, like especially from people who disagree, you get a lot of arguments in the form of questions. Like, aren't you wrong about this because of this? That's not really a question, that's a criticism. So you see a lot of the proving points when the audience gets to go stand up by the mic and say something. They also do a lot of introductions where they say who they are and like all this fluff that doesn't matter. So he has a bit of self-awareness. He's doing the bad thing, that's why he's talking about it. Feynman got this because he was known as like a genius expert, etc. Then he'd go into a situation and ask questions that seemed basic, and people would be a little like confused and find it weird. Because that's not how the other genius experts acted. He told a story where he was trying to understand some schematic diagrams about a factory or plant or something. And he didn't really know how they worked, so he like pointed at something and was like, what's this, basically? Or I think he guessed what it was, so he's like, what if this valve is uh, blocked? And he asked that because he was trying to figure out if it was a valve or not. But instead of saying, is this a valve, he decided to just like take the risk and ask about it like it is a valve, and he'll get corrected if he's wrong. But he might not get outed as not even knowing what the symbol stood for. Which is not, I don't recommend doing it that way, but anyways. And the person looks at it, and he looks at it, and he's like, oh my god, if that's broken, the whole thing will break. How did you find the key point so fast? You're a genius. He was just trying to figure out what the symbol on the paper meant. But it was a basic question that he had, like, what do the symbols on the paper mean? But a lot of people avoid asking those. And then they have a hard time. They spend the whole interaction, like, trying not to look dumb, even though they don't know what any of the symbols mean. They're like, what can I say where I'll get through this without anyone finding out I don't know any of the symbols? And, like, why would a physicist know all the symbols on, like, an engineering or architecture diagram? It was, like, something like the plans for the building or something. So, like, it's completely reasonable for him not to know. Alright, that was pretty decent. A partner at Y Combinator. That's where this person came from. How did I get to the homepage of their blog? Like, that should be really easy to find, right? Oh, there it is. Fooled by expert. One comment here. Okay, is there any, like, index? Oh, browse the archive. That's what I wanted. Perfect. Okay, so there's a lot of posts. Oh, it's not that many. He writes, like, one per... less than one per month. Okay. Okay, now this one was... Oh, it's not that long. I thought it was long. Okay, main error 1, overreaching. Main error 2, initiating discussions with people who do not want a rational discussion. Takeaway, don't overreach. That doesn't seem like a useful takeaway. Like, don't do the thing you did. How will you know when you're overreaching in real time? How will you detect it in advance so you can avoid it? And, like, what do you find tempting or positive about overreaching? Are there any upsides or perceived upsides that you need to, like, learn something about? Or is the solution you already know everything, just don't do it? If you already know everything, you shouldn't be doing it. Like, there's something you don't know. Okay, make sure people want to discuss rationally. That one sounds more actionable. Like, you could ask them, do you want to discuss rationally? Which is a thing you might not have done, but you could do, and then maybe that would help. But this question's not very effective, I think. So maybe you need a cleverer strategy. Because people will lie, or they won't want to answer. A lot of things go wrong. So you could try with, like, a really straightforward, naive way and see what happens. But this doesn't even say just, like, ask them. It's not clear about what the plan is, what the action you're going to try is. And then this one, like, definitely doesn't have a clear action. Like, what do you do? How do you do that? Okay, so it's not even the first time. One thing that stands out to me about this first impression is he doesn't have many discussions with his online friends or online people he knows or whatever. Like, he doesn't have a lot of online discussions. It's not like he has a discussion every week or even every month on the Discord or on Curie.us or something. Like, in the last year, how many discussions has he had online that were, like, a decent length and got to some sort of... got anywhere? Got very far along. If you had productive discussions online, you'd have a better idea of what they look like and how to have them, and then you have more of a chance of having them with your real life friends. Like, maybe if I guided you to have a productive discussion, then you'd be able to take some of those techniques and use them on your friends and get them to be more productive too. Like if you learn to fix some of your own flaws, then you could help other people with the same flaws you just fixed. Okay, people with these kinds of attitudes, I don't know how to deal with anyways. Like, if people won't even try to answer questions or try to have a rational discussion, like, even like a little bit, like even faking it, then I don't know what to do. If they're just like, who cares about this intellectual stuff, then I suggest, why do you want to be friends with them? What for? If your answer is you want to play video games with them or you want to play baseball with them, then just do that and stop trying to discuss philosophy with them. If you want IRL people to discuss philosophy with, then try like a meetup group or something where you actually find people who are interested in that. Oh, so this is partly a reflection on himself. Like, he sees this in other people because it's an attribute of him. That's my first guess. And I think that saying other people are like that helps excuse it when he does it. He's normalizing his own negative trait. And it looks kind of inevitable to him, like how could it be otherwise? Which helps normalize it and helps make it seem to him that everyone else does it. You should practice on like Freeze and it'll be easier than practicing on this guy. Like get a discussion to work well with someone else. This email is from NikLuk. He's talking about some discussion with his friends. Yeah, so one of the things that can help with this stuff is having a common goal. And then you can relate things back to the goal. The issue is people are as they are, what can you do? Basically, people don't change. So he's discussing whether that was true or not. But his buddy doesn't really like philosophy discussions, so it didn't work. If Nick gave us actual dialogue, we might be able to comment and give him some tips on things he could have said differently. That's another advantage. If we had some online discussions, then we could see the chat logs and give advice on things he could have done differently. But here, we only have his own summary, so it's really hard to give advice because his summary is already after his own interpretations. Some people change, sometimes, and more people could change if they wanted to and tried to. It's not like our genes stop us from changing or something. Alright, I wanted to see if my post was moderated. Some of these blogs have moderation. No, it went up. Looks like. School's punishment system when you were a kid going through school. I just want like your general opinion of it. Like detentions or I didn't get suspended or expelled, so I don't know a ton about those. A lot of their punishments are lower grades, which is like grade falsification. It makes the grade less representative of your skill and knowledge of the subject. But sometimes you can get like sent to the office or something and you just have to like sit there for a while, or sometimes they make you stay after school a bit, like they just waste your time a bit as a punishment. Or sometimes they'll like make you do like an extra assignment or something. It wasn't very effective or threatening. Like it wasn't like, oh my god, I can't dare get punished. That'll be awful. It like wasn't that bad with my experience. And it wasn't very fair at all. Like if two people got in a fight, sometimes they would both get punished even though like one person was really at blame. And sometimes like one or the other person would get punished and it would be kind of arbitrary who it was, like not necessarily the right person. But I think like blaming both people is pretty common even when one was more of the aggressor. Because they don't want to sort it out and try to figure it out and they're worried about getting tricked and they want the problems to go away somehow, so they figure if we punish everyone, then everyone will have an incentive to somehow make the problem stop happening. Yeah, I found school was a lot of fluff. I read books during school, I did my homework during school, I got bored during school. The teachers tried to prevent me from reading books. In fact, one of the times I got sent to the office, multiple times I got sent to the office was for reading books during class. The funniest one was it was English class and they were showing a movie and I got sent to the office for reading a book instead of watching the movie in English class. It was pretty absurd sometimes. It's quite arbitrary though. Like a different time I literally fell asleep in English class and the teacher caught me and then there were no consequences. Oh, I guess I'll link this. And here's the blog I'm looking at now. Oh, there's a missing space in the reader view. Hate logic looks like one word. Logic and TCS are categories, though. I like the domain name. Learn useful philosophy. Oh, this. There's a FI post about this. What this? What? If learning happened implies then dual control needed? This doesn't make any sense. Does she mean if learning happened, it implies dual controls were used? Instead of needed, we put were used here? I think that would make sense. I don't know why this is a hypothetical statement, like why it's being called that. It's like a logical implication or something. DD's post was rationalism. The issues weren't really about logical details. He was ignoring the actual question being asked about a real world problem. And he gave an answer about some logical points about like what is necessary for what. And it's like, yeah, sure. There are solutions. It's not like we're logically fucked here. But the question was about what do you do about this actual problem that parents experience. And DD did not give a useful answer to that. Why was the name left out? I think it's bad to not give credit to people. I was wondering if he was going to relate it to this. This isn't a very careful logical statement. For it to be most beneficial, they would need, like, maximally good philosophy and problem-solving skills, not decent. This is a bit nonsensical. People often choose their own values but aren't dedicated or passionate. They're not quite sure how to get dedicated or passionate about something. It doesn't mean the values aren't their own. I mean, I stayed home a lot anyways. The internet is at home. I haven't even been gaming. I've played like one game of Overwatch in the last 3 weeks. I've been reading and writing and programming and making videos, stuff like that. And watching videos. Like I watched and read about coronavirus and China. Yeah, I do programming work from home and philosophy work from home. I do all my work from home even when there's no coronavirus. It's not like they let me telecommute because of the virus. But there's always plenty of stuff to learn, think about, and to write about, and so on. You could probably get some extra business if you had a blog or a YouTube and you did some educational or informational content related to auto restoration. It sounds like the type of thing where there's probably not enough info online. Like, I'm sure there's some info, but I'll bet there's room for more. Like, it's fairly popular, but I doubt there's a million infos online already. There's probably things you could add and get some attention. I know there's a TV show about it. I watched a little bit. I forgot the name though. Was it American Pickers? This might just be finding them. I don't know if they restore them. I think there was some show I was watching where they did custom builds of cars. And then also I saw one the other day on YouTube. Here it is.
We want to go and find
these are some China bloggers who have been talking about the coronavirus and also about how the communists are awful. But they're also into motorcycles. And they did like motorcycle repair and stuff. And they made this other channel. I watched like a few minutes, but it's not really my thing. This is some stuff I read about on the AR list in like 2003 or so. I don't know if she's read those old posts or not. She probably got it from somewhere. Oh, so section one was values first, and this is friends first, so it's like being a pandering second-hander. I don't think I think she's making it sound like if you pick your own values, you'll automatically be passionate about them or something. But I think passion is its own problem, separate from choosing your own values. Usually, if you let someone else choose your values for you, you're not going to be passionate. But if you choose your own values, it still can be hard to find passion. A lot of people are a bit lost in life and they don't know what they want. Ayn Rand talks about wanting things being hard or taking work or something. Like, it's not automatic. The word I is a theme in an anthem as well. Yeah, if someone else chooses them, they're generally not your values. Sometimes they become your values, but it's often not in a way where you end up very passionate. But like a lot of people get forced into stuff when they're like 4 years old. Like their parent wants them to do piano or chess or whatever. And then when they're an adult, sometimes that ends up being their career and they actually like it. At some point, they might have the option to quit, like they actually have enough control over their life and realize that they'd rather not quit. I think that's a thing that happens. Because you can learn reasons that it's good and see what's positive about it. Yeah, by the way, a presumption of this when I wrote it was that you already value reason. It's not like it's not meant to clash with values first. Like you value reason and philosophy and rational thinking and critical thinking and all that, and then you find people compatible with those things that you value. If you don't have those values, though, you're in trouble. Because unreason doesn't work. I do not value religion. I'm an atheist. I was never religious. There's a lot of flexibility about hobbies. Like, suppose that you're into MOBA gaming. There's different MOBAs. If there's a great philosopher who you want to play with, and they play MOBA A, and you haven't really committed yet to MOBA A, B, C, or D, like, why not pick MOBA A? You could survey them and, like, look for a problem, but there's a decent amount of flexibility. Or similarly, okay, suppose there's, like, several TV shows you might watch. One of them, if you watch it, you get to have interesting discussions with this person you respect who's watched it already. And then one of the other ones, they're not going to watch it. They're not planning to. So that's an extra bonus for the first one. And then there's a third one where maybe you could talk them into watching it. Maybe you could get them to take an interest in it. That's not a bad thing for them. Like, you're not asking them to take an interest in it over something way better. You're just asking them to, like, make a fairly minor tweak. Or there's a bunch of things that all look okay or pretty good or whatever. And then you prioritize the ones where you got this bonus of actual philosophy discussion. It's like book clubs. I don't think it's irrational for the people in the book club to read the same book. They're like, there are a bunch of books I could read, but I don't know which one's better, so it doesn't make that much difference which one I pick. Like, that's the general attitude they have. If they really wanted to read a particular book, they shouldn't join the book club. They should go read the book they think is way better. But if they don't have really strong preferences about which book, they're like, well, there's a bunch of good books and I don't know which are which and I'll try some. Then it makes perfect sense to join a book club. And then you read the same ones as the other people. And you do approximately as well as if you picked the books yourself. Because you didn't have a way better way of picking books. But then also you get to discuss the books because everyone reads the same books at the same time. So you get bonus discussion. So you come out way ahead. So yeah, I didn't think that post was very good, but that's enough. Are you an objectivist or a Popperian or something? Or how did you find me? Usually people have some sort of major thing in common, which is why they found me. Ah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't manage to get very far in his book. I thought it was a lot worse than his lectures. Like, I actually finished his two main lecture courses that he teaches. What did you dislike about the book before you saw my video? Yeah, it wasn't a very heavyweight book on the evidence. There are much worse things that people fawn over. And there's much worse things in the world, like the Chinese Communist Party that is tyrannizing over 1 billion people. But yeah, the book was fairly popular in certain groups where you might expect better. Oh god, I haven't been following Jordan Peterson much, but I read that he got taken to Russia for ill-advised medical treatment, which is really quite odd given what he said about the gulag and stuff. But he and his daughter are a bit into pseudoscience with diet and shit. And I read that he was probably brain damaged. So, rip new books and videos, I think. I don't really know anything of for puppies. Yeah, the meat diet was bullshit. People are so eager for non-intellectual solutions. They want something that's easier to control than their mind and their ideas, like their diet or how much they exercise. They want easier solutions than having to learn. But those other things usually do not actually solve their problems, which involve their ideas. People also want to put the responsibility on others. They want experts who are responsible for solving their problem. That's a lot of what psychologists are for. Is they're like, oh shit, I have personality problems. That sounds hard to deal with. Let me pay someone to make it his problem instead of mine. But it's your fucking life. If psychologists were going to be very good, they'd really need to be in a secondary role where, like, you're the primary driver of your life. You solve your own problems, but they give you some help and tips and advice. But you shouldn't expect them to take responsibility for your life. It's the same with teachers. Um, in a proper school or with a tutor or whatever, the teacher should be the helper, not the person responsible for learning happening or making the main choices. Like, they should just be the hired help. It's like when a CEO hires people, he's not passing the buck to them. They're the hired help, and he still makes the decisions. Even when they're an expert on something, he'll take their advice and then he'll consider whether to accept it or not. Like, if he hires some scientists and they tell him, like, we should do this line of research, or this product will never work, abandon it. He makes the final decision on whether he believes them or whether he should get a second opinion from a different expert or what. He doesn't just get to say, oh, well, the experts told me, so it's not my fault. He can try to say that, and sometimes people might excuse him if they think he did a reasonable job in the CEO role, but so there's different reasons you could hire the nutritionist. Like, is there something that you don't know about how to do a diet? Like, the main important thing about diet is calorie counting. Like, how many calories go in and how many calories you burn are the main factors if it's just about weight. Like, you don't really need a nutritionist for that because the issue isn't nutrition, it's number of calories. Um, and then if you want someone to make all the decisions for you, I think that's not a good idea. Like, you should look more for get some advice and that makes sense to you, that you understand, and that you have your own motivation for your, like, if you're just doing it because they told you to, it's not going to motivate you very well. But if they're just the hired help, then it makes more sense. And then there's sort of like a middle ground where they keep like nagging you because your motivation is a bit sketchy. So it's some sort of mix of the two. If you're taking like some of the responsibility and leadership, but you have trouble doing like the whole thing, sometimes getting someone to help can work. Like, it's not perfect or ideal, but it can be better than changing as a person in a big way can be hard or not happen. So it can be better than nothing. The more the attitude is, I want this person to make the problem solved somehow, the worse it is. If you're just sort of telling them, you fix it, I don't know how, you figure out how, that's your job, not mine, then that's bad. If you think there's a bunch of different approaches and you want advice like choosing between them, then that's more useful and makes more sense. Um, I'm not an expert on this topic, and I generally find discussions about consciousness are unproductive, and people just say a bunch of vague stuff and don't have good answers, and they're not really solving any useful problem. But if you post to one of my forums, probably someone will reply. I might reply. Especially if you can sort of show me what the point is. But I wasn't getting much value out of Rand's position on that anyways. I don't generally see the need to have very detailed views on how consciousness and the self work. Like, I generally find you can just go through life without that. And when people try to talk about it, it's just no one really knows anything, so it's not useful. I don't know why people are so into it. Like, I think there's something bad about it, usually. It strikes me as one of those things where people like to find something complicated and then speculate about it, instead of finding something where they can make concrete progress. They'd rather have the really clever advanced topic. You see it a lot with like artificial intelligence. People like don't know much, but they want to speculate about AGI. In order to solve what problem? Like, what decision will be made differently depending on this account? What depends on it? Like, we know basic features, like there's a brain, there's a body, there's a mind, there are muscles. The mind has ideas, including values. I mean, if people are going to argue with like those basics, then sure it matters, and I'll disagree with them. I don't really do angry. I'm very good at staying logical. So yeah, basically I'm pretty consistently like this. Even if I'm a bit upset, it's generally it's not anger. Like, anger's kind of a mean emotion where you like lash out or you want to hurt things. So that one I'm particularly antithetical to. But even if I'm in a bad mood or something, um, my logic doesn't desert me. It's similar to if I'm really, really tired, I'm still logical. I don't start screwing up a lot. I'll screw up some extra, but I'll like be aware of it and double check things and triple check things. You can take account of it when you're not at your best. I used to get in arguments with teachers sometimes, and I'd be calmer than they were, which did not go over very well with them. Yeah, they can get pretty annoyed. Partly it makes them look bad, or makes them look unhinged. They think you're faking it to act superior to them. If you're not faking it, that's maybe even worse, because then you are superior to them. Okay, so I got to the end of this article and it just says judgment is good. But it never says what her judgment is or what the issues were. Which would have been more interesting to me. But that's okay, like, it's an okay article. Yes, judgment itself is important. But, like, it brings up the Four Strands group and me, but then it gives no specifics related to the Four Strands group or me. It's just sort of like, people from Four Strands were wondering why I cared so much and tried to judge. Um, which is sort of like teasing you, like you're gonna get info about a real world scenario, but then you don't. So it's like a little disappointing. I don't know how relevant that'll be. Like, have you looked at my stuff, like my animals blog category, where I talk about things like the brain is a computer, the mind is software running on that computer? Unless you're engaging with that kind of scientific perspective that involves an understanding of software and stuff, I don't think it'll have very much to do with me. Alright, 3 new blog comments. This might be the one at Chrysanthi. Oh no, that's the name. Yeah, oh, Vo. Yeah, that's the one. I remember. I posted an article about this a while ago. Yeah, if you do a lot of testing in a small town and you don't let people in or out, you can figure out who's infected and control it. Alright, this one here is a translation of a Japanese article about COVID. Later. I don't think that was the right button. I hit the reader hotkey, but this is Chrome, not Safari. The reader button or something? What is this? Oh no, that's a translate button. More tools. Maybe you have to install a reader extension. Whatever, this is fine. Alright, well this sentence is translated poorly. This is hard to follow. Where did you get objectivists to debate you, by the way? Is this from this year? Like, oh yeah, there. When you hover, it gives you the year. So it's only like 2 weeks old. Who's Tucker? Oh, Tucker Carlson. So not a literal stream. Got it. Is his show live streamed, not pre-recorded? Oh man, it calls Hegel and Marx huge intelligences. Question mark, question mark, question mark. How do you 11 thought this paper was really good and important? I think the translation is fucking it up a decent amount. I don't know if anyone else wants to try to read this. That doesn't... Does that link actually work? Oh, I guess it does. Oh, Riesman posted something. Oh, this is a Twitter thread he posted before. I responded and he ignored me again. Oh, more patio. So this was the older one. When I read this first sentence, it just reads to me like you're not going to talk about computers or relate anything to scientific details. And also, there won't be a clear problem like how does this affect my life? What choice or action should I do differently in my life based on this information? I don't know how it's going to relate to either of those two things. The practical or the scientific and computational. Right, so this is a non-computational attempt. It's not precise. Like, you say you want a solid view of consciousness, but you're not going to get one this way. If you're not relating it to computers, then it's all just rough approximations. And I don't see what this adds over the rough approximations already have. Also, you're trying to have a very complicated discussion. I think you should learn how to have simple discussions first. Like, have you had 10 productive discussions that you can point to and hold up as examples and say, here were 10 really productive discussions I had? Because if you haven't done that, I don't think you should be trying to have a really complicated discussion. You should start simpler and figure out what works and get some success under your belt. You are ridiculous. What a waste of time. You went back to the start, which was a rationalization. So yeah, it sounds like it didn't work out too well. I think that was them flaming you, if I read this correctly. So I see a lot of complexity here. The use of images that aren't quotable. But you can't copy paste this text. Yeah, I think this is just all a mess. I think it's a dead end, a blind alley. Like, even if you're doing a good job, I don't think it would be productive. So one of the things I'm doing to try to get discussions to be more productive is trying to get people to use trees as a tool, idea trees. So I have a tree about how to make trees that will teach you how to try using them. I think if you did that, it would help you be able to think things through in a more effective way. And then if you do that successfully with a bunch of stuff, and then you go back to consciousness and you try to use the same techniques, I think it might give you a different perspective on it. Alright, I might be ending stream soon. Does anyone have any other questions? I got through the things I was planning to, but I'll take a look at this Popper newsletter thing. But yeah, they have a bunch of Nicholas Maxwell, who is terrible. But yeah, Brian Gladish. I commented on this paper, and he was not interested in discussion. He didn't answer my direct question. He said back some like fluffy things, and it was like multiple paragraphs, so it looked like he was responding substantively, but he didn't actually want to engage with me. Also, his paper was mediocre. It was definitely not the worst. Like, he had some correct knowledge of Popper as opposed to the usual just total confusions. But it also had some flaws and problems and stuff, and so you combine that with him not actually wanting to discuss the topics he writes about, and it seems kind of like there's nothing there, no value to get there, I think. He's an anarcho-capitalist, and he was like inserting anarcho-capitalism into his paper like unnecessarily and kind of bizarrely. Like he just really wanted to shoehorn it in there somehow. Right, the obituary I was gonna read that looked a little interesting. So this is Joseph Agassi as a Popperian. He used to post on a FI list for a little while, but I couldn't get straight answers out of him, and then he left. I remember it was quite a weird discussion because so he's a bit of a psychologist or something. He'd written a book about it, and I got some obscure book from an obscure branch of a library that he'd written, and I read it, and I tried to talk to him about it. And he was making assumptions like that paranoia is a real thing, and there are these people called paranoids, and it's like a problem, and so I tried to ask him some basic questions, like what is the evidence that paranoid people exist? And he says, oh, the case reports, like we've seen them, we've written down observations. So we have actual observations of this thing. And I said, right, but like where can I read that? Where can I read a book or a paper of these observations? Like where are the clinical notes from the psychologist who interacted with a paranoid person or something? Like, I just want to review the evidence firsthand. And he literally could not understand the question and just kept telling me the evidence exists. And that's the type of evidence we had. But he never referred me to a single um documented case of a paranoid person written down by some expert and like documenting their observations. so that I could actually like see, okay, what behaviors are you seeing from this person? What did they do that makes you think they're paranoid? You know what I mean? He just could not understand the question. He had no evidence. He didn't get it. So that was pretty fucking sad. It's like a bit mystifying how someone can be that bad at understanding anything and then also uh get invited to write obituaries and be respected as a philosopher. Um, so are you going to deny that our brains are literally computers? If our brains don't do computation, what do they do? Like, I think you're just not familiar with physics and computers and stuff. But if you are, just speak my language and tell me what I'm missing. Okay, and so are you familiar with what computation is? Like, where are you coming to this position from? Oh wait, I misread that. No, it was a no, I agree. I took a no as a no. Okay, so our brains do computation, but computational models are bad? I don't quite get it. Like, our brains do computation, but you want to leave computation out of the discussion of what's going on? Like, I think it's important to relate what's happening to the... Like, your model of a person has to involve the things we know about them, like there are carbon atoms involved, there's computation involved, and so on. So you want to fit into that proper framework, like minds are software, so ideas are a type of software or computer algorithm or that kind of thing. Like you don't want to just leave that out. You have to be compatible with it. Yeah, I think you're just using a lot of fancy terms, and I don't know what they have to do with my life or reality. And most of them aren't defined well. And when I read your definitions in the paper, it didn't help either. Like you define consciousness in terms of awareness, but that's just a different word that also needs a precise account. Like it's moving the goalposts rather than helping. But also you're just treating like figure out consciousness as a problem worth solving, but you haven't related it to any action or choice or value. So it's second-handed. He's only a little older than me and already famous, and he got complimented from Quinn. He was called a star. He was very focused on social status. Nationality, background, a broad if headlong intellectual concern. So when it gets to actual philosophy stuff, it's very vague. He was eloquent. That's how much he impressed people. Oh, does video speed controller work, Justin? That's not a problem, pessimistic idealism. Like, we're talking about valuing my body, my life, my mind, my values over my neighbor's. That's understandable without getting into theory of consciousness. So I still don't know what practical problem you're trying to help with, or why any of the things you're talking about come up in the first place. They were liberals and Democrats, but those are contradictory. Cooperative socialism? Well, that certainly contradicts liberal. That's quite a long paragraph. Jesus. Doesn't even fit on this page. Oh, wait. There's a paragraph break that was very hard to see. They're still long, but they're not as long as I thought. Okay, this was actually boring. I ran into this drive-through only problem one time when I wanted to get fast food, and the restaurant was closed, but the drive-through was still open, but they wouldn't give me food because I didn't have a car with me. It wasn't a very big deal. There was a fast food restaurant open like next door, but it would really suck with a COVID test where you took public transit to try to get one, and then you're like going around in public thinking maybe you have it, and then they're like, no test for you, and you're like, what the fuck? I went outdoors for this? Right, NYC has a lot of non-car people. And yeah, choir decided to go ahead with rehearsal. Fucking stupid. Wait, did you see that bullshit headline? $10 stock could be the next Amazon ad. What a fucking scam. It's like, oh, here we go. They had it on fucking March 10th in Washington, which was one of the states that was hit early. What a bad idea. Yup. Green Numbers Day? What does that mean? Oh, stock market. Is that what you mean? I saw market was up like 3% or something. Maybe we're not all gonna die. My computer's hella laggy. Why is it so bad? There's nothing obvious making it bad. I've just noticed it being laggy while I'm streaming sometimes. Masks work. is, of course, masks work. We have plenty of scientific tests that show that they filter out a lot of stuff. Alright, later, guys.